Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that was the inspiration for that lovable goofball Randall Flagg in Stephen King's The Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Warhammer 40k Relic from WizKids. In Warhammer 40k Relic from WizKids, 2 to 4 players essentially attempt to get to the center of the board and overcome some evil, nefarious plot by some enemy of the Imperium. Now, this game is a riff on Talisman. Essentially, it's a Warhammer version of the Talisman game system in which players move around the board trying to get to the center, and all sorts of kooky and fun things happen along the way. Essentially, players randomly choose one of several different characters in the Warhammer universe. You can play an Ultramarine, you can play a Commissar, you can play an Assassin, you can play an Imperial Grunt. There's all sorts of different characters you can play, and they come with these little bust characters that you fit on a little peg that are going to move around the board. Now, your player card will also fit into kind of a stat board. You'll have 4 different stat tiles, things like cunning and strength and life, and you're going to go ahead and attach that to the character card. Now, you're going to go ahead and set your stats. You're also going to have a peg which shows which level you are. As you level up, you're going to gain more and more advantages and good and fun little things. Now, the game board is a map of the galaxy, and you've got those different tiers. Of course, you've got the outer tier and then inner tiers until you get to that very center location of the board where the scenario sheet is going to be. Each game will contain a different scenario, one chosen at random, which will require you to do something very special once you get to the center of that board. Now, each player is also going to get a random mission that they must accomplish, as well as various other cards. You're going to have some gear cards, which give you some advantages. You're going to have some power cards, which will let you substitute for die rolls, but also do some other fun and interesting things during the game. Now, on a player's turn, they're going to roll a die. Now, this die roll will essentially allow them to move in any direction. It's a roll and move game. But as I say, you don't just move in one direction, you can move in either direction. Once you end your movement, you're going to go ahead and get to the exploration phase. Essentially, the spot you're on is either going to have kind of threat markers, or you're going to have text. You either resolve the text, which may call for a die roll or something else, or you are going to have, as I say, these threat markers. The threat markers are like wax seals, and they tell you which of 3 red, blue, or yellow threat decks you're going to draw from. You draw those cards, and you lay them on the space, and then you try to resolve them. Some of these things will be good. Again, it'll be more equipment or advantages in some way, allies and what have you. And sometimes they will be monsters you have to fight. Sometimes there'll be events that you have to overcome, or different kinds of encounters. There'll be different things that happen when you find these cards. If you don't or are unable to resolve these threat cards, they remain on that space on the board, and if somebody lands on there next time, they will have to deal with it. Now, during the engagement phase, you're going to go ahead and you may have to test one of your skills. Now, if you encounter an enemy, it's going to tell you kind of what you're going to roll for, whether you're going to roll for strength or whether you're going to roll for cunning or willpower. And another player is going to roll a dice for the NPC. You're going to roll a die. You're going to take that number and add it to the number that you already have for that stat. It's going to add to the number it has on the card. Whoever has the highest roll wins. Now, if you win, you're going to may get some advantages. If you lose, you're going to lose a life. There may be other penalties. But if you win, you're also going to take that enemy card and have it as a trophy, and that number is going to be the value of the trophy. Once you get to 6 trophies, you can go ahead and turn that in order to buy things with with those trophies. Now, also, you've got your mission cards. You're going around the board trying to fulfill missions. Once you've fulfilled 3 missions, you can turn those 3 mission cards in, those completed mission cards in, for a relic. And relics are very powerful weapons and items that let you do fun and interesting things on the board. But critically, you will need to have a relic in order to get to that last tier within the center of the board. So you're going around and around trying to do these things, trying to meet the threats, trying to get closer into the center of the board. Finally, once you get into the inside of the board, you no longer roll die. Essentially, you kind of just move one space at a time. You take various tests. You may have to discard relics, so you want more than one relic. You may lose life. I mean, there's all sorts of kooky things that can happen there once you're in the center. But once you get to the very center of the game board, the scenario sheet, it will tell you what happens in that kind of final battle, and you have to see whether or not you can defeat it or overcome it in some way. Whoever makes it to the center and defeats the conditions on the scenario sheet wins Warhammer 40k Relic. So this was a game that came out initially, I think in 2013, by Fantasy Flight Games. Of course, Fantasy Flight lost the Games Workshop license. WizKids has got it. They put out Fury of Dracula. Now they're putting out this. And the game is very similar. There are some changes. For instance, in this one, I think there's more characters that come with the base game, and they're painted, which look amazing. Overall, this is a beautiful production. Game board looks great. Cards look great. Artwork is phenomenal. And like I say, those minis are just astounding. They're just great. Beautiful production from WizKids. Really like it here. This is, of course, the premium edition. There's I think another edition they're putting out that doesn't have the painted minis, but beautiful game. Beautiful game. Like I say, I had played this when it first came out, and I'd never played Talisman before, so I kind of didn't know what to expect. I played this game, and I liked it, but I didn't love it. My chief criticism was I just thought it went on a little too long. I thought it was just a bit too long for what it did. But also, too, it was at the time when I was just really getting into the wider world of board games, and I think a lot of it was over my head. I don't think I really read the rules enough. I don't think I studied it enough, and there were just some things that kind of didn't click for me. So I had some issues there. So WizKids sent me this game out of the blue. I didn't even know they were doing this one again. And I'm thinking, oh wow, well I'll try it again. I mean, it looked beautiful. I thought, yeah, I'll try it. I got friends that like Warhammer down here, so I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll try it. So I played it again with some friends, and first of all, I remember there's a lot of cool things I love about this game. I love how you never know what space you're going to land on, what's going to happen. You got some kind of an idea based on the card decks, but you never know what tests are going to come up or what monsters you got to fight or things like that. I think it's just very, very cool that way. I like not the randomness, but I guess there's randomness to it. But I like the variety that this game gives you. It doesn't feel the same all the time. I like that it's a race. I like that you're trying to get to the center. You're trying to complete these things first. You're trying to do what you're doing, but you're keeping an eye on what your opponents are doing, how close they're getting. You know, if they got relics, if they got whatnot. So I really, really like that. But I think my fundamental core criticism that I had originally kind of holds true. This game, it lasts a little longer than you want it to. It's a 2-hour plus game, and it just seems like it's just a little longer than maybe the fun it generates. And I was talking with the people I was playing with. I mentioned it to Ken, and Ken said his problem was the first act of the game. For him, it takes too long to build up your character, because before you go in those inner tiers, you got to build up your character, got to build up your strength and stuff before you can get in there, because things get harder as you move on. And he said that first part of the game where you're just going back and forth, it just seemed like he wasn't accomplishing anything, he wasn't doing anything. And once he started to build up his character, then he had a lot of fun with it. And I think he's right, I think that makes sense. I think it just takes too long for this game to get going, but once it does, it's really fun. But there's just a lot of time in that early game that just takes time. I like this game. I have fun with this game. I think it's a good game. But it's longer than it needs to be. I think if you're a fan of Warhammer, you're going to get a kick out of this. If you like the Talisman system, you'll get a kick out of this. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I don't know that everybody will. because of that length issue. My recommendation for Warhammer 40k, generally speaking, with those caveats, is going to be try it before you buy it. I think a lot of people will like it. Even people that are not terribly familiar with Warhammer could really get into this, I think, if they go into it just wanting a fun sci-fi adventure. But just be aware, it's a longer game, and that may be a little off-putting to people. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and did you know that Stephen King was originally going to call his Dark Tower series the Dice Tower series? For realsies. I ain't fooling.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
2, 3. Wow.
They're all hits.
5 hits.
Nice.